Your very first show business inspiration.
What is Gilbert Gottfried? Gilbert Gottfried's Up All Night was this show on USA or TNT or something like that. But it was his showcase of all the B horror movies that they would show, and it would alternate between him and Elvira as the hosts. And so Elvira was my first crush, and that was. I don't know. I think I've always been interested in being a master of ceremonies to an extent, to be the Walt Disney curator or the Rod Serling, you know what I mean? And at an early age, Gilbert Gottfried's, here's a horror movie sort of thing, captured my mind in a way that I could never shake. So I guess, what is Keith's weird upbringing?
Okay. So, well, that's very easy for you to say, and you seem to be the kind of guy who, from the very beginning, knew where you wanted to go with your life.
I think so. I mean, I think that changes. I think as being an artist of any kind, that direction changes always, right? I always knew I felt more comfortable with darker material. I gravitated towards those horror movies and stuff like that. I gravitated towards the Universal classic monsters, but it was Walt Disney. I often think about it in my mind as my biggest influences were Walt Disney, Alfred Hitchcock, and David Lynch. In this weird synthesized thing, that's what I want to be.
That could be a recipe for disaster.
100%. Or just the weirdest movie ever made. But that darkness, that quirkiness, and then somehow having what I consider the true definition of romanticism. This even looking at classics like the Bela Lugosi Dracula, it's a romantic picture because it's larger than life, and there's themes of beauty and love and despair on this grandiose scale. And I'm drawn to stories like that. I'm drawn to things like that a lot. So.
You seem to have a very large heart.
Thank you, sir. It's a medical condition, but yeah.
That's serving you well. I think about myself entering this business, and I can identify an epiphany that occurred that determined that I would take that direction. Is that true for you?
As far as determining that I would be a part of this?
In show business, yeah.
Yeah, I think it came early on for me. I think it was my first play that my second play that I ever did, the first one that I officially count, right? I was young, I was in 4th or 5th grade, Pirates, Penzance. I was cast as a nobody cop, and I went out on the stage and I started mugging like nobody's business. And the reaction I got from people, that was the epiphany. That I can cause a response in someone. That was the moment, I think, up until that point, I had been looking for. I had done sports and all sorts of archery and weird stuff, but this was, I could hear them laugh. I could hear them be scared. And I fed off of that. And I think epiphanies, especially in that sort of giving you a direction, it's realizing this feeds a part of my soul that I never knew was hungry. You know what I mean? And that's sort of what pointed me in my direction.
Yeah, we share a similarity there. My epiphany, if you will, was the same thing, the reaction of an audience to a role, the very first role I played in a real play.
Yeah.
I was 36 years old. I'm a latecomer.
Awesome. But that's awesome.
I played Ruckley in One Flew Over the
Cuckoo's
Cuckoo's
Nest,
so I only have one word to say.
But still,
you know what that was.
Yeah.
But the reaction from the audience is really what kind of drove me to investigate a little bit more. What is this? This isn't just something that other people do.
100%.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to be honest with me, Teddy. There are other places I can go.
My eyes. I wouldn't change my eyes. I don't know that I'd honestly change anything, but I wouldn't change my eyes.
Why?
You compliment them. People compliment them. Not a lot or nothing, but I like them. I think they're nice looking eyes.
One of the things that appeal to me about this business is the variety of jobs that you can do within show business that aren't acting.
Yeah, 100%.
And one of the reasons for that being important to me is I wanted to work in show business and nothing else. Well, obviously, as an actor, you're not going to work every day.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one of the opportunities that this business offers, that you can still make a living even if you're not seen on screen or on stage. Yeah.
But I think it's not even, for me, it's not even just making a living. It's feeding, again, that need, that creative hunger. That how do I have a small production company that I co-own called Bean Dip Productions, and the entire impetus of that was nobody's hiring me right now, but I still want to tell stories. So how do I get out there and satisfy that itch? Well, let's just go make them ourselves. And through that process of trying to figure out how to satiate whatever compulsion I had, that's where I figured out, oh, I can edit. Oh, I can do this. Oh, I can be a UPM or whatever. I can try my hands at different fields, you know what I mean? And so it became partially out of necessity, but partially out of wanting to have that satisfactory feeling again, in my mind. You know?
Okay, so you must have had someone who was feeding you and housing you and clothing you.
No, I was selling my body on the streets.
Oh wow! All right.
But that was at times when it was struggling to do other jobs. Whether I was a butcher at Kroger, I did some IT stuff, taught whatever it was. Even when I'm teaching acting, like I love it and it satisfies part of me. But I also recognize that's not the job. That's not. It's a part of the job. It's an element of the job. It's not the job.
How does that idea of working, what I'll call in the real world, although this is far more real, I think, than what we're experiencing in our society now, working in the real world at a day job, how does that inform how you approach your art?
Now, I don't have the day job, but when I did, it made me appreciative of it. It made me hungrier for it. It's especially when you're like in a cold room chopping meat all day, or when you're working at a factory, or even if it's an intellectual job like teaching math or anything that I did like that. It was always this thing of I can put my mind to this. This gives me a level of safety, but this isn't what I want to do. It makes me long for those moments when I can be on set. And there are times when being on set is excruciating because I don't want to wake up that early, I'm tired, this is hard, strenuous work, I have to run all this times, all that stuff, whatever it is. But it's still a job that I would rather, my heart's there, as opposed to other places. Part of my heart can be at this job or this job because A, I like the work, or B, it's going to provide for whatever I'm trying to accomplish. But every part of me wants to be doing the creative work, exploring that.
Ian McKellen says that he has never been formally trained, that he's never taken a class, never been formally trained, and yet I think all of us can agree that he's pretty good at what he does.
He's an up-and-comer.
Yeah, an up-and-comer. Yeah. If he could just put on a little weight, he'd be. So I'm wondering. If you feel like there is something that goes on in an individual that drives them into an academic form of this versus just get out there and do it and learn heuristically.
I think it's the same thing as what drives a person to a specific religion, or just drives a person to a specific type of relationship. I think it's the way your brain is wired to understand this. We're all looking for a justification of why things are what they are. I think for me, anybody that pursues art has a natural understanding or gift for it. We all get storytelling because it's a part of us. It's a part of our culture, regardless of if we're watching movies or not. People have been telling stories since the caveman days, right? So that's bred into us just on an almost biological level at this point. For me personally, I did do the training, the college, and grad school and all that stuff. But it's because I enjoy asking questions. And that gave me a platform to ask more questions. I'm not the most talented person when it comes to acting in the art, but I feel that when I walk into a room, I know more about the theories than most of the people when I walk into the room. I can tell you the history of, I see this technique you're doing, I can tell you why that technique works, because I've spent so much time studying that technique, That doesn't make me better, it just helps me comprehend things. It's some people need heaven and hell in order to live in the world. Some people need Zen and Nirvana to live in the world. For me, I feel that I needed that cushion of information to explain everything to me in order to go out and do things. It's my badge and my gun, you know?
I'll kill him. I'll kill him. He's mine. Please.
I was thinking about documentary film and television the other day, and it occurred to me that all film productions and all television productions are in a way documentary, because they either reflect our culture, a segment of our culture, or they are an attempt to affect our culture.
100%.
And both documentary and dramatic or rom-com are all agenda driven.
Yeah.
So what is it that makes a documentary valuable? A documentary in that box of documentary versus the other information that we get from, shall we say, theatrical film?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think you hit the nail on the head right there in the idea that, nothing we create is in a bubble. Nothing we create comes from a vacuum. It's all informed. I was watching this interview with Kevin Feige, who does the MCU Marvel stuff, right? And he was talking about this movie they made, Captain America Winter Soldier, that has so much to do with espionage and spying on people. And they started making the movie, and in the middle of making the movie, the Edward Snowden thing happened. And it aligned perfectly with the story that they were telling. And it just happened to be a comment even further on the world. And I think that's the appeal of documentaries as well, is that it's a comment on our world, but ostensibly it's stripped of the superficialities that you'll find in narrative fiction, you know what I mean? And so it feels like a more pure version. It's I'll say it's a very graphic comparison, but it's coitus without a condom. You know what I mean? It's like it's the purest version of that. Ideally, that's what we're thinking.
Can always count on you to get back to that.
Condom talk.
Which is one of the reasons I would like you to be here.
But I feel that, and granted, I think more nowadays we realize that, well, even documentaries or news shows have a voice that they're specifically trying to express. But the idea of touching upon something authentic and real, I think it's appealing to everyone. We want our love to be real. We want our characters to be real. We want our food to be authentic. We want all of that in our life. So the appeal of a doc or a reality show is that same connotation, you know.
Bob Fraser was a showrunner for the show Benson. He also appeared on the show and ran several theater companies around the country through his life, and he also had an acting program called You Must Act, which I took when I was early into this business. I also attended a seminar, and one of the questions he asked the group is, how would you define your job as an actor? And of course there were many answers. And he said that defining your job as an actor is simple. You're an independent contractor, because if there's no contract, there's no job. What do you think of that?
I think it's interesting. I think it's a great way of looking at it. I think it's an important question for every artist to analyze for themselves. But I think, to me, a little bit, that depends too much on the business aspect. I mean, I know you can interpret it in a more broader sense, right? But I think... I do think it's an apt comparison, because independent contractor, because we literally come in, we do our jobs, we leave. That's the idea. In an ideal world, we can just walk in, get to these depths of emotions that are really intense, and then walk away. Hands done, job done, finished, and everything like that. So in that sense, I like it. We're not a part of the company at a certain point. We're people that are just coming in as specialty employees, right?
Yeah.
I don't like when the business becomes all about business. I like the show part. I like that. I like that. Again, the authenticity of we're here to make something. That's what I like.
Yeah.
And so I guess just with a contract sort of statement, it's sort of gets me, and I don't know if I.
No, I can understand that. It hit me that way too, but when I thought about it a little further, we were talking about the job.
Yeah.
And, my thought was, well, my job is to entertain.
Yeah.
And I brought that up, and he said, well, actually, your job on set is to be a problem solver. The producer has a problem. He has a sheet of paper with little black dots on it, and he needs a human being to fill that out. Yeah, I thought that was like, oh, yeah.
That's and I think it's an important thing to remember, too, that we are, nobody wants to think they're replaceable. We all are. Nobody wants to think we're just cogs in the machine. We all are. And so that is a viable thing, an important thing to have in the back of your head. But I also feel that if that's all you think about, and don't get me wrong, there's definitely jobs that I do just for the money, it's a part of the gig, it's a part of how I survive. But I don't want to be the guy that solely thinks about that. If we took Stanislavski's view of the contract that exists between the audience and the player, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that being part of the definition. That you're here to suspend your disbelief, and I'm here to give you a reason to do it. Like, that's awesome. Let's do that. Let's do that as the interpretation of independent contractor. I'm cool with that idea. But again, that's me wanting loftier things for it. I want to. I part of me acknowledges the fact that I'm just there to say the lines and keep the story moving. That's the practical thing of it. But part of me wants to focus and believe that I'm creating something that couldn't happen with another actor, that couldn't happen on a different day, that comes out of thin air, that we're all collaborating and we're making something that is unique, Yeah. And I feel if I lean too much into that business aspect of it, I lose sight of that part.
Yeah.
And that's why those reactions, those moments that matter, that's why I got into it. And to sleep with Neve Campbell. So, those two
there you
things
go.
really.
What's your advice for dating?
That's why I'm here. I have no idea what to do.
Because you're a nerd, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. You're the very definition of a nerd.
Painfully so.
You mentioned earlier that in one of the things, or probably the thing, I think you said, that got you enamored of show business and performance was the audience response.
Yeah.
There's quite a difference between live performance and what I choose to call the camera arts, where you're being recorded and then there's an editor involved and so on and so forth. So we get that regardless, one way or the other, in live performance. But how do we get that in film and television?
For me, it's about finding. For a long time, that was my fixation. Was the fixation of the audience's reaction. Until at one point, I was doing a play called JB, and I was playing the character of Nichols, the story is basically Job, right? And Nichols is basically Satan. And the God character was telling me that I was wrong about something, and condemning me, and bringing up my exile and stuff like that. And I was young. I didn't have a good relationship with my parents or anything like that. I didn't have what I considered home. And for a moment, that's what God was saying to me. God was talking to Keith Brooks, the person, instead of this character. And so in that moment, the reaction, the place I was looking for the reaction changed. And instead of looking for it externally in the audience, I found it within me. And that was when it occurred to me that same thing I was looking for, the contract between people laughing in the front row or gasping or something like that, I could find within another actor. I could find within the things they made me do. And so it became, again, that chase of authenticity, that chase of me lifting you up, me making you feel a specific way, me giving my partner in the scene what they needed, and getting that reaction from them. And so I think for the camera arts, which is a great way to put it, that's sort of my pursuit.
So it's a much more intimate thing then.
Yeah.
It's a much closer, and it's a much deeper sort of connection. It sounds like you're saying.
100%, and I think it's applicable for all the arts as far as acting. I think people often make the comparison that stage is way out here and the film's right here. And to a technical level, yeah, I guess you're right. But I think those conveyances, those emotional impulses that we have, those emotional connections, are applicable to every form of acting there is in the world. You know, even if you're doing animation or podcast or something like that, and you're recording your parts separate, it's still the idea of trying to evoke a response, a reaction.
Yeah. No, that's I agree with that. That is it. That's kind of the way I look at it. Also, is allowing myself to be fully present and kind of see what happens.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
see how that's either accepted or rejected or whatever.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. You and I have talked in the past about the myriad of schools, instructors, teachers, theories, methods, whatever. Do you think that there is, what should we say, a theory of everything about acting that could be pursued with any thought about finding it?
I don't know if there's one overall encompassing thing. You know, it's like trying to find the cure for cancer. We throw out the term cancer, but it really is a family of diseases. And different people, their brains operate different ways. I often say it's like also the comparison of martial arts. Like a kick hurts no matter what type of kick it is. But some people, their body needs them to kick a specific way, or sometimes you're in a situation where you can't kick a specific way. And I think the same thing holds true with acting, where all of these ideas, all these theories and groups of concepts have really great gems in them. And one of them might speak to you on a really deep level. That doesn't mean the rest of them don't have anything that are appealing. And it's also the same thing with, we talked about storytelling before, about it doesn't exist in a vacuum. All of these ideas are based on each other. And so there's this incestuous thing of, if I'm doing Miser, well, part of what I'm doing is based on Stanislavski. And part of what he's doing is based on Vakhtangov. And part of what he's doing is based on Donchenko, right? And it keeps going and building and building. And all of it has an element of Grecian theater to it. So I think that theory of everything in of itself is the theory of storytelling, of protagonism and antagonism and sort of stuff like that. And if you boiled all that down, we all could be on the same page. But if there's one, I don't think there's one acting theory that encompasses everything. I think it's just a myriad, to use your word, of different perspectives.
Yeah.
Hey!
Let me tell you what's gonna happen. One day, you'll see a pretty little girl in a pretty little dress. And you'll remember. And then you'll see this pretty little girl in this pretty little dress everywhere you turn. You won't be able to get rid of her. Won't be able to get her out of your head. You won't be able to sleep at night. And you'll get this bright idea that the only way to put your demons to rest is to put this demon to rest. The problem is I never rest.
Acting is not a genteel profession. Actors used to be buried at the crossroads with a stake through their hearts. Onlookers of their performances were so troubled that they feared their ghosts. Now that is an awesome compliment. David Mamet's book, True and False. This has been Screen Test.